After a full day of mulling over this incredibly baffling hand that happened on the Hustler stream, I've decided that I think that it is overwhelmingly likely that she is cheating, although it's obviously not known for sure. I think it's something like 90% that she is cheating, and today in this video, I'm going to break down the leading theory as to exactly what's happening.
That is super, super strange. You can see his reaction. He seems somewhat disturbed here. It looks like he's seen a ghost, almost.
I don't feel like I should have won that hand. I should not have won that hand. And if everyone wants to flip out about it, good for fucking you. I don't give a shit.
She's actually dating the player named Rip on the show. I have an inside source that has told me they've seen them, and also that he is backing her in a lot of these games.
Allegedly thinking this lady's cheating, she gives him the money back she won. This guy, the cowboy guy, is freaking out. Something is really weird here, guys. I've never seen anything like this. Something is not what it seems.
Before we do, though, a couple quick notes. First off, much better. Second off, I've seen the overwhelming number of threads online about what happened, and typically they all think that she's innocent and that Garrett's being a sore loser. But I do want to make one quick point. Most people are idiots. Sorry about that, guys, but at least no one thinks I'm talking about them. Now, some degree of pros have also weighed in thinking she's innocent, and there's certainly a discussion to be had here. It's far from concrete fact one way or the other, and we do have people on both sides that really think one way or the other. However, this issue has drawn in a lot of people that frankly aren't really a part of poker at all, and they're just saying all kinds of wild shit and upvoting each other and saying, yeah, that's right. The reality is that the average person weighing in with their opinion on this story has almost no knowledge of poker other than basic poker stuff. The actual experts are being sort of drowned out with just the overwhelming masses of people that think poker hand, girl won, oh, guy is being a sore loser, rather than thinking about this critically with actual knowledge of the way poker works. That's not to say she's guilty. There's definitely still a small room for error here. However, we have to look at the evidence that we have and use critical thinking about what happened here. So today I am going to put up what I believe to be the leading theory as to exactly what happened and why I personally think that she might be cheating here. Put enough caveats in there because, you know, legal stuff. A lot of you guys have very strong feelings about this, so I'd like you to just put those to the side and join me as we talk about a potential theory. Then afterwards, we're going to give the case for and the case against, and you guys, of course, as always, can weigh in the comments with what you think happened as well. The theory is this. While she's playing, someone has access to the cards. Either someone in the back studio has access to them and is forwarding them to someone, or someone has figured out a way to hack into the RFID system at the table and is transmitting to some other location. However we want to dice this up, somebody has access to the cards. Then, when Bobbi gets into a hand, she has to take a little bit of time and think things over when it's her decision, and that's why she plays slow. During that time, somebody transmits to her a signal that she either is good or not good. It could be in a variety of ways. There is certainly a vibration theory that we're going to take a look at as well. There could be signaling. There could be any kind of thing that lets her know that her hand is good or not good. And then she can proceed accordingly. This would allow her to play fairly accurately in big pot situations. She would be able to know if her hand is good or not good, and then kind of craft her plan based on that information. This would be a very different kind of live stream cheating if it is the case when compared to something like the Mike Postle cheating. With the Mike Postle story, he knew what his opponents had specifically. So not only he knew when he was good, he also knew when to apply the pressure. And there are a bunch of hands where he runs crazy bluffs against people that have really shitty hands. In fact, there's one hand where the guy ended up calling down anyway, just thinking that Postle was full of it. Why is this the leading theory? Well, let's talk about all of the ways where she's cheating first. In those examples, what she would be doing. So for starters, we have things like marking cards. It doesn't really make sense to be marking cards in this instance. You could have certain kinds of lenses that can see marked cards. The reason that doesn't make sense is you're not typically going to be able to mark cards so well, you know, the exact type of card. So a hero call of this magnitude wouldn't really be possible. Typically when people mark cards, they just know what the aces are, or maybe what like the kings or queens or tens are. So they know in situations what's possible. But typically speaking, that's not going to allow for super sick, crazy hero calls where you know someone has 8 high when you have jack high. So I'd rule that one out. I would also say that the kind of cheating where she's looking at a device and knows someone's hand is also very unlikely. I think the exact accuracy of the types of decisions that she's making aren't nearly as flawless as, for example, how Postle played in a lot of his big pots. And then additionally, looking at her, don't exactly know where the screen would go. There's also a theory that maybe someone could see Garrett's cards when he looks at them. I strongly doubt that. I know that he is in the 9 seat, and that typically has maybe the most chance of something going on because the dealer's in between and you don't exactly know what sight lines are like. However, Garrett is a professional player. He's played for many years. There's no way he has a leak in his game as simple as the 1 or 2 seat can see his cards. Those might be things she's not doing, but let's talk about things that she is doing as we make the case that Bobbi is cheating. Note, these are opinions. Please don't sue me. I know it might seem like I'm being extra nitty about my language here, but Bobbi's husband tweeted out that she called Bobbi like a book. She's done it to me plenty of times at home. Oh, and as far as the legal consequences, all I can say is to buckle up. So, oh shit, this chair doesn't have a fucking seatbelt. Anyway, let's start off big picture. What are things that would happen if someone was cheating in a poker game? Well, for starters, they would win money. And every session Bobbi has played here, she in fact has won money, although one was a very small win. She has played 3 sessions and she's won in all 3, with wins totaling something around $240,000 or so. This figure also includes having paid back $135,000 that she won in a hand versus Garrett. So she has been absolutely killing these games, but it is a very small sample. Okay, so she's winning. How has she played in the big pots? And the answer is she has played extremely well. And we're going to look at a few different hands that were either weird or had weird things going on, or she made incredibly sharp plays to look at some specifics here besides just the Jack 4 hand itself. Here, Bobbi gets the river with a missed flush draw against a boat that Garrett had. He bets the river and she starts to talk a bit, and the angle changes to a side angle where we can see her quite clearly. In this clip, she talks a bit, and then notice what happens to her chair and abdomen for something like 5 seconds. A very clear vibrating starts in her body and chair. Extremely clear. She is shaking. The chair is shaking. The moment the vibrating stops, she says, "You can have this one."
I don't know what she's really thinking about here.
You can have this one.
What could be causing something like that? Maybe a vent, or maybe she's tapping her foot and we're not seeing her leg move. Certainly possible that this is just a one-off, and I didn't see any other great angles of vibrations happening. However, certainly something kind of weird that we should at least note. Also, isn't this kind of a weird tank? We're in a huge pot. She called a turn bet. She's facing an over bet. She has a bricked flush draw for Jack high on a board where she barely can even beat any of the bluffs. And she tanks for what, 30, 40, 45 seconds here and uses a time chip. She uses a time chip to tank. What is she waiting for? This does not make much sense to me. Typically speaking, when players have a hand this bad, they just fold. They might posture a little bit to make it not seem like they had really nothing, but she is actually spending something of value, a time chip. You have to act quickly on these shows. Spending a time chip to wait to make a decision. Why would you do that with a hand this bad? That's also a bit of a red flag to me as to what's going on here. There was another pretty strange hand that she played against Eric Pearson where she called a 3-bet with ace-king, and then post-flop correctly floated the flop with ace-king high, and then decided to put in a weird just over min turn raise when Eric bet the turn, and she had a better ace high. The reason this hand is at least a little bit weird is when you have ace-king in this situation, typically speaking, your hand more prefers to call because your opponent is either bluffing or they have a very strong overpair. So when you have ace-king, you're actually not in that bad a shape. I will say that because she has a club and a diamond, it maybe makes a little more sense to raise because you block more of the continue range when you do decide to raise. However, you also do block more of the bluffs. I'm not sure what the solver nerds would tell us in terms of if this was good or not. But the reason that it's weird to me is this is a very non-intuitive size to use. She basically raises 40-ish% of her entire stack here with a min raise. What do you do in this spot versus a jam? It's very unclear. And that is a trend that we've seen in now 2 of the big hands she played. Of course, we're talking about the Jack 4 hand as well. The raise small when you're good, that would be not something most players would do. And then if your opponent re-raises, what do you do from there? So this hand looks very similar to me in the fashion that it was played to the Jack 4 hand, and it is not something that you see from players very often at all. This one is not crazy enough to where I would say that I think that it's it's cheating or something like that in its own right. But it also shows us another big pot where she's making a very sharp decision facing a turn bet. Next hand I want to look at, I want to key on a couple of smaller points in the Jack 4 hand that didn't really get discussed much before. For starters, when she min raises Garrett on the turn, she also says to him something like, I'm scratching my face because that's the shit I got, which, by the way, makes no sense. But frankly, a lot of what she says makes no sense. So I don't think that's too out of the realm of normalcy.
Oh, wait, hold on. Let me scratch my face. That's the shit I got.
There's a classic tell in poker for people that are maybe new to the game, or maybe you've not heard of this before. But typically speaking, when we play a game of information, humans are more inclined to do the opposite thing than what they really have. So for example, it's the classic weak means strong, strong means weak. So when you have really good hands, people tend to not act really strong and big because they want to seem quiet and weak, and maybe you should put money in. Then when they have weak hands, they tend to act much stronger and puff their chest out and throw more chips in aggressively and all that kind of stuff. So from the way that we're looking at it, where she is talking in the hand, that does seem strong, but she's saying that her hand is weak when her hand is weak, which is quite rare in live poker to see someone do that. But then also to be engaged in this kind of conversation where you're trying to bait someone to do a thing that would essentially, that kind of baiting language is to try and get someone to jam, right? I'm weak. I'm really weak. What are you going to do about it? Trying to get someone to put more money in. But she's doing it with Jack 4 on this board. And she's doing it in a spot where her hand is terrible and would have to fold to a jam. Except she doesn't. She calls. Once Garrett jams, now she starts to think about it. And note a couple of small things here. She thinks about it and she puts a time chip in, waiting the exact same type of length that she did in the Jack 8 hand before she folded. And now she's doing it again with Jack 4 here, which is a hand that no one would ever call ever. There are no people that would do this. She also leans forward, blocking her midsection so you can't see, so the vibration theory can live on as we can't really see her midsection in this hand. I also want to talk about this conversation about her not knowing her hand or misreading her hand. And I simply do not believe that is the case, because there's a specific conversation that happens here after she calls and people are asking her what she has. And the conversation goes as follows.
Okay. You have pocket 3?
What? No. No, I just thought this is a pure bluff catcher.
Someone says, you have pocket 3? She says, no. Someone else says, you have a 3 in your hand. She says, no. I have a pure bluff catcher. We can hear the audio. She says here she does not have a 3 when responding to someone saying, you have a 3 in your hand. Then after the hand, she doesn't really say that she misread her hand until a little bit later, where that becomes the story in the narrative. And then when she realizes that she looked at her cards before calling, she says it was to check if she had the Jack of clubs. I don't believe this. When people misread their hand and they look back, they go, oh shit. They have a moment of reaction. That didn't happen here. People also don't look at their hand and then misread it before making a huge call for like $100,000. Not something that happens. And then also, just to cap the whole thing off, she couldn't explain why she called. And the reason is that if she is cheating, she knows to call. But how do you explain this hand? You can't. I will say I don't want to put too much stock in the exact things she says here, because she said a lot of things. And so I don't think that that's inherently means that she is cheating. But I do think she's lying, given that she said she doesn't have a 3 here when responding to, you have a 3 in your hand, and then said later that she thought she had a 3. We've made a fairly strong case in favor of this theory. However, we need to do some objective journalism, and now let's make the case against. To start off with, let's talk about her Hendon mob. We addressed that in the last video. Before, we saw all these small stakes tournaments, and now she was playing higher stakes. However, Hendon mob has taken down those past results. So it's unclear exactly what happened. Apparently, there's a claim there are 2 different people. That's a little weird because it's a 3-word name. I don't know how possible that is, but apparently there are 2 different people. In fact, if someone could let me know if you saw her playing these tournaments before or not, that would really help me understand what is truthful, because of course we don't want to misrepresent things. And if those were someone else, then Bobbi has only played poker recently, and those entries should not be used against her. Next, there are also a series of hands that Bobbi has played poorly. For starters, there's a hand where she calls down with pocket 5s on a 4 straight board in a multi-way pot. Seems like the kind of hand you wouldn't make if you did in fact know what someone was holding. I will also say that I do think that hands that are evidence of playing bad aren't necessarily evidence that they are not cheating, because if you did have this advantage versus people, you would want to purposefully lose some hands to create confusion. In fact, this is one of the reasons why the Apostle thing was so hilarious. The guy didn't bother at all. He just crushed everyone at hundreds of big blinds per 100 because fuck it, I'm a poker god. The biggest pot I've seen Bobbi play where she made a bad decision when she was behind, there was a hand in the first stream she played where she had aces and called a 15K river bet into a pot that ended up being 50K. I will say what was a bit weird about this hand, though, is she did not do her normal tank on the river when making a decision. She just snap called it basically when Lynn bet, or she called very quickly. So, again, bad decision, right, in a big pot. So this has to be in the evidence that she did not cheat, that she's making incorrect calls in some of these large pots. There was another big pot where she had pocket jacks at the end of the most recent stream, and it was a very dicey situation with 3 people, and they were on flush draws that had a lot of equity. And she decides not to raise, to just call a turn bet with a set when obviously you would want to raise if you knew your opponents were on draws. So again, evidence of not making the perfect play. However, when her opponent bet the river, she did a little bit of a tank and then made the correct laydown. Maybe you could go either way on that one, but again, not super sharp accuracy on every street a la Apostle. After having looked at both of these cases, guys, look, it would be great if this was legitimate. And I do hope it is. But I just can't look at this hand, and I can't look at this situation and think that it's on the up and up. I just can't. I have played a lot of poker. I've analyzed Lord knows how many hands. I've seen some shit. This is nowhere near any of that. It's in its own category. And all I can keep thinking about over and over again is this hand I played when I got cheated on PokerStars, and I bluffed with a straight flush draw, a 10-eye straight flush draw, and I got called by jack high, no pair, just like a gutter, jack deuce offsuit. And he min raised me and called me down. And this is the only hand I could think of that's even close to that. And I confirmed got cheated. I know that's anecdotal. We should stay away from that. But we have to believe our eyes at some point. What if Garrett had 7-6 of clubs and she had 8 deuce? Still fine? Are we going to just throw this all to the wind? And especially when it's done correctly. What are we supposed to believe here, guys? I'm sorry. I know people want to believe. I know everyone wants to think this is just a hilarious hand where some person that doesn't know what's going on beat Garrett. And certainly I do believe that is what happened. But I don't think that this is the kind of hand that's possible legitimately. I really don't. Personal opinion. Also, we know that the I misread my hand is a lie. Because she said right after the hand, I don't have a 3. No, I don't have. She basically saying, I don't have a 3. Someone says, do you have a 3? No. I have a pure bluff catcher. Why is she changing her story? Well, there might be a reason that makes sense there. Maybe she doesn't remember what her story is entirely or exactly what happened. The point I'm making is this is not the kind of hand that happens. And there were a bunch of hands where she does that weird tank in spots that don't make sense and then comes to the correct decision. Can't get on board. Sorry, guys. I know a bunch of other people that say it's fine. I can't get on board with that. I feel fairly strongly that this was cheating. Not 100%. Obviously, there is a chance she is innocent once again. But that's my analysis, and I feel pretty strongly about it.